Hi, welcome back to another session class on Peaceful Passages. I'm your moderator, Theresa Bates, the founder and teacher for Peaceful Passages. And one of the things that I want to cover in today's topic is the topic of clothing. What do we wear? What does the deceased wear? So in this particular class, I want to cover those topics. And it's almost specifically for having the tahara done for the workers, but also I want to show you a couple of different options on things to dress the deceased in. So we'll cover that for the deceased, the second half. So I want to cover clothing for the people that are doing the work of the after-death care itself. So the different clothing that you would wear is pretty much similar clothing that you would wear whether you're in the home or at a funeral home. And when you're doing a tahara in the home, there's a lot of things that can change, but when you're working in a funeral home, remember on how you want to present yourself. You want to present yourself secure and professional. Don't show up in jeans with holes in it and a ratty t-shirt. What you're doing with the tahara is something that is really sacred and holy. So colors matter. You want to wear something that is, like a blue. Black is okay. Sometimes red, as long as they're darker colors. I don't recommend white or beige because they can get wet. And for women, you don't want a white t-shirt to wear, or men either. But you want to wear a little bit darker colors because if they get wet, then sometimes the clothing that you wear does get wet, but it can become see-through. So whatever you do, I want to encourage you to wear darker colors on top. I generally, when I'm doing a tahara, whether in the home or in a funeral home, I find I like wearing polo shirts because the polo shirts, they tend to breathe. The collar is fairly high, a high rise, and the sleeves only go about t-shirt length. T-shirts are fine. You don't necessarily want anything long sleeve like what I'm wearing today because you're going to get water on your arms, or you can get water on your arms. But you want something that you can move in. You can wear jeans, but have something where it's they're not too tight where you can't bend over or squat on the ground because sometimes you might have to pick something up. But you want it to be where you're able to move, but you don't want it free flowing that it could get caught on a wheel of a gurney, a corner of a casket, anything like that. So you really want to put a little bit time and emphasis on what you're wearing. Again, you want something that looks professional. I wear basically when I walk in, I look like I could be what a paramedic would wear. Polo shirt, short sleeve. I have the khaki utility pants. They have pockets on the side. That's where I keep my gloves. That's a habit I formed over the years. I always have extra gloves. But I'm able to move around and I'm in work and have the ability to sit, stand, squat, lean over, whatever needs done. But it's also everything that I wear. I try to wear navy colors so that way if and when I get wet, then it's not going to show through. And as well as if there has a lot of blood, then the darker colors won't show as much as the lighter colors because we don't always know what kind of tahara we're going to be walking into. So always wearing darker colors is a good thing. As for shoes, you want to wear closed-toe shoe. Tennis shoe is okay. Boots are okay as long as they don't have a high heel. No high heels. Just think, you're going to work in the healthcare field. and closed-toed, no heels. But when you're working back in the, whether you're at home or in, some of the protocols are a little bit more stricter there at a funeral home. Whenever you're doing a tahara, always keep in mind what we call PPE, or personal protective equipment. That means for all the taharas, I always wear gloves. So you want to have gloves. They have gowns. You can wear a mask. Sometimes in some of the more challenging taharas, where there might be a lot of blood exposure, depending on the type of death. Some people want to wear a face shield, or it depends on what you're comfortable with, but also on how the deceased had passed away. If you want to wear the full PPE with the gown, maybe the death that you're taking care of, they died from a contagious disease and you're concerned about it. So a lot of the gowns that they have, they tie in the back, and they'll cover the front, and they go down to all the way down to the wrist. And the funeral homes have these, but if you start your own tahara teams, it's good to start building your stock and having different size gloves, your gowns there, and having the face mask there ready and available. But I know the funeral homes have them, and sometimes the home where the deceased passed away will have some of those kind of items. But if you want a gown, you want to put the gown on first, and then the sleeve goes all the way down, and you put the glove on over the top of the sleeve, so that way there's no water that's going to get inside. Sometimes what we do is we might put one glove on, then put the gown over that, and then put the next size up. I like wearing a small glove. I do have big hands, but I like a tight fit of gloves. No plug for Sam's Club, but I like the gloves at Sam's Club because they're stretchy. They don't tear easy. They work well with your hands. I won't give you the price on that because, that could change. But I'll put a small on, then I'll put my gown on top of that, and then maybe put a medium over that. So that way there's the double protection that I have. Again, that depends on the tahara I'm taking care of, but I always wear gloves. The gowns are nice, because sometimes when you're rolling a deceased over, I will put a towel there, but if you're limited on number of people, maybe you have to lay the deceased on your stomach, but you have that towel of protection, so that way you're not directly touching the deceased. Or I will put a trash bag, so that way if they have to lean on me, I have the trash bag on my side, then the towel, then the deceased, so that way there's no transfer of any water or anything like that. The different kind of masks, they have the regular blue ones, or the N95s that filters a little bit more of the air out. And working in the back and the funeral homes, sometimes there's, and I will respectfully say, different smells, because they use different chemicals at each place that is just different. And some might be just extremely clean. Others might have more of the pine sol smell, or bleach, or sometimes formaldehyde, because working in the back rooms, sometimes you are in the preparation room, and that makes a difference. But you're still, going to be wearing pretty much the same thing. So I'm going to start on this portion talking about the clothing for the deceased themselves. So with that, what you want to think about is when you're having the tahara, following the beautiful ritual of tahara that our Jewish brothers and sisters have set up. They bury in with what is called, and I had to learn how to say this. They're buried in what's called takrahim, and that's basically their burial garments. And the burial garments consist of, generally, you have pants, a shirt, a jacket, and a hat. And I have a few of those that I want to show you the basic design of. So here's one of the pants that they have, and they're generally going to be white in color, but they're going to be big. They're going to be open at the front, but most of the ones that I've seen are going to be closed at the bottom. So that way the feet are completely covered. And in my experience, I like putting the pants on first, but you're going to put this on the back side. The tie is going to be at the front. And yes, they are big. They're really wide because you want all the clothing that you're going to dress the deceased in to be bigger than normal. So if they normally wear medium clothes, you want to put them in large clothes, whether you use tak rahim or their normal clothing. And I'll explain normal clothing in a minute, because it's a little bit harder to dress somebody that is deceased than it is when they're still alive. But you'll put this on and tie it closed, and it can cross over at the front, and that's how those are designed. The shirt that I have is I've made. But here's the shirt, and this shirt goes about down to here, but I have it designed where it goes from the front this way and it opens in the back. So that way, when you're putting it on, it just tucks around behind the deceased, and it makes it a lot easier because you're not trying to roll the deceased over again and again, trying to put their clothing on, because it's not always really easy to dress somebody. Once they passed away, it's possible, but you can buy a set of tak rahim and for your tahara team and practice on how to dress somebody. And I'd really encourage that, because if you can do that, then when the time comes, you'll have an idea on the best tricks and things to do to dress somebody. But this is the shirt that they wear. A lot of times in the tak rahim that I have bought on spur of the moment, and I didn't have a chance to make one. They'll put the opening in the front, and it just depends on the particular style that you buy. And that's the shirt. The jacket is going to go over all of that, and this is the jacket. It has a collar to it, so you'll see they're a little bit different. And I can go ahead and put this one on, and mine are really long. So what I tend to do is, after I put the shirt on, you're going to put the jacket on, and then I have the ties here. But I have on some of them the options of whether you want the hands covered or not. And on this one I didn't, but I have it where you can fold it over so the hands are completely covered, and it'll look real nice. But they have the burial garments to mimic what we would look like for the priesthood. And like you saw, for me, they're really big, because you want the ability to the freedom to work with the deceased without causing them any harm or any injury while you're trying to get them dressed. And part of the tak rahim package that you get is, as well, is called the shroud. And the shroud you can purchase individually or purchase it together with the set. And the shroud is basically, it's just a really big piece of fabric. And I'm not going to unfurl the whole thing, but it will cover the casket. This one I have is really long. It's twice as long and twice as wide. But this is what you're going to lay in the casket, and wrap them up afterwards once they're put in the casket. And remember when our kids were little and we had the receiving blankets and we would tuck them in, and they all look like they're like little snug bugs in a rug. That's what the shroud is for. It's to completely wrap the deceased. So what I tend to do when I have doing a tahara, there's somebody on the team that's designated to take care of the shroud, take care of the tallits and the casket, and to get it all prepared. So that way, when we're ready to place a deceased in the casket, we don't have to stop and do that aspect. So the takrahim will be the shroud. So if the casket is laying, rectangular this way, the shroud would be put in at an angle, and it's described a little bit better in the book, but you want it to go catty corner, so that way you're tucking in the deceased. And once they are there, I always keep the top open, so that way the people have the opportunity, the family members, the loved ones of the deceased, have the ability to go in, pray with them, talk with them before the casket, the lid is closed. And usually we anoint we put the earth from Israel on them at that point. So there's all different kinds of things that you can do. There are some places out there that if you don't want to offend anybody, but in green burial, sometimes people don't want to be dressed in any clothing and just have the shroud. That's people's choice, and sometimes that happens. But with this particular shroud, the shroud that I showed you is one that goes in the casket. There are a couple options that are out there that the shrouds are actually made with nylon cords or really thick linen straps, so that way and supports in the bottom, so that way when the deceased is put in there, they can carry to the graveside and then lower down to their final resting place. And so those are a couple different options for the shrouds. As for undergarments, I want to cover undergarments. Or let me jump back real quick. I do want to cover dresses. The takrahim that I showed you that's my man's large, and it looks really big, especially the pants, but it does cover the whole entire foot as well. And I'd rather it be bigger than too small. But if it's too small, then you're just going to have a pair of scissors and cut it at that particular point if the size that you got was too small. But for women, there's a couple different options that are out there. You can have ones that are made with a skirt that are long and a shirt, or you can have full-length dresses with sleeves, without sleeves. And the takrahim that are out there that our Jewish brothers and sisters make, a lot of time they're cotton. You can have 100% linen. There are patterns out there to be able to make what you want. So if you want to be dressed in takrahim, then those particular things are there. As for the undergarments, sometimes the bra and underwear can be put on, sometimes not. Depends on what's going on with the deceased as of the underwear aspect. Sometimes you can't contain the fluid, and I'll just respectfully say the fluid at a time of death. It is completely understandable because your whole emphasis is to keep the garments as clean as possible. So have on hand some kind of diaper if you need it for the size of the deceased. They have them in many, many different sizes, and you want to have that on hand. It is totally acceptable to bury somebody with the diaper on. I know a lot of people like using pull-ups, but after death care, it is, through experience, a lot easier to use a diaper, or I call a brief, than it is to use the pull-up style of underwear. They're not going to be real easy to get on, and sometimes they rip, and the briefs are a lot easier to keep the bowel and the bladder contained. My experience is usually the issues around the peri area is going to be more bowel than bladder. So using the brief is going to be a little bit more helpful. And we'll cover more of those specifics on that kind of care on another episode. So there's still a lot of people that like wearing, want to be buried in regular clothing. I highly encourage stay away from blue jeans. Blue jeans are hard to put on when they're alive. They're even harder when somebody passes away. So I really discourage blue jeans. And try to get them in an outfit that is a little bit bigger in size than what they normally wear. But there's still people want to wear what they want to wear. There have been women want to wear their wedding dresses. Men want to wear the suit that they had. If it still fits, great. And there's been a couple of taharas that I've done for women that they want to wear a worship outfit, or the men want to wear, a specific shirt and pants. These items are going to be a little bit challenging to put on. Again, we'll cover that specifics in a different class. But what I tell people is when, and if you want to be buried in something very specific, like a wedding dress or your leather coat that you've worn for years, if they're hard to get on or if they're too small, especially too small, and you can't get the arms and the shoulders through, it's easiest if you would cut on the back of the arm, cut down through this way along the seam line. That'll open that whole area up and be able to get the shirt or jacket on that way. But and I'll tell people, honestly, if you want to be buried in your wedding dress, I'm very honest with them up front. We can attempt to do that, but I reserve the right to cut the garment down the back, because sometimes it's just too hard. So what we'll do, and that's why I make my shroud or my Talk Rahim shirts open in the back. And if it's just too hard, you're going to take a pair of scissors that either you have, or you can ask the funeral home where you're at, if you have a pair of scissors, and just cut from the collar down as far as you need to get the garment on. For women, if it's a dress and it goes easy over the hips, but you can't put the shirt on, you can cut the back down to the waistline, but make it as easy as possible. If they don't want the garment cut at all, say, okay, provide me something else for them to wear, but you can lay the garment on top of them. Because sometimes people want the impossible, and you do the best you can. But if you can't bury them, put the wedding dress on them, so to speak, wedding dresses are a big deal. Then you can lay them on top of them while they're there. So a lot of us believe in resurrection. So when she is resurrected, then she has her wedding dress to put on. So that's another perspective to be able to do there. Shoes, generally, when you're doing a tahara, I have not experienced a lot of people wanting to wear shoes, but you can. I kind of try to shy away from having shoes, and boots. Boots are going to be really hard to put on deceased because there is not a lot of freedom to be able to move joints, muscles around to be able to dress somebody. So again, I want to discourage shoes, but it is possible. But a lot of it just depends. It's each tahara case sensitive. Each tahara is going to be different. So the Rosh or the Rosha, the lead of the tahara team, gets to say what they can do, can't do. If you start your own Hever Kadisha in your community, that's one of the topics that you can talk about is shoes. One of the other things that I want to discuss is tallits. Because different congregations like using, the men like to wear a tallit. Sometimes women do, sometimes they don't. That's up to each person individual. So if you want to wear a tallit, generally what we do is in the casket, we'll lay the shroud down first and then place the tallit in the casket on top of the shroud where the shoulders would be for the deceased. And then once we lay them in the casket, we will go ahead and cover them with the tallit. We'll put that on first. And a lot of tradition is they will cut one of the tzitzits off the corner, the fringe off the corner of the tallit, and we'll wrap it in the deceased hand, and then we'll put the shroud on top. But because that's their tallit, and it makes it basically inoperable and goes with them into the promised land, into heaven. But my question that I want you to ponder, and there's no right way, no wrong way, but just something to think about. So if you want to be buried in a tallit, do you cut the tzitzit off? And there's been a lot of discussion whether it's yes or no. Again, it's personal conviction. Because if you have your tallit and you're in heaven and you want to wear the tallit and use the tallit in heaven, why would you cut the tzitzit off, making it not useful? So would you? Sometimes people do, sometimes people don't. There's no right or wrong answer. I wanted to throw to have you think about that because it's an important topic to think about. Because when I pass away and I have my tallit on, I want to use that tallit in heaven. So I want all of my tzitzit there. But whatever you choose, and you have that written ahead of time, what you choose, we will honor whatever protocol. Cut the tzitzit off, don't cut it off. That's totally up to you. And if you have any other clothing questions or anything like that, my website's there. My email address is on my website as well. And happy to answer any questions. If you want me to come out and teach classes, I can do that. But that's all I have today for clothing. So thank you again for joining the session of Peaceful Passages, and we will see you next time. Shalom.